Hello and greetings to my soon-to-be human in common family. This is Abeita, Coyote walking in this world, and real-life Isleta Pueblo superhero. I am here to introduce my open cover letter. So, dear human in common, this is regarding your diversity and inclusion specialist position opening that you have with your team. This is an open cover letter from a two-spirited, bisexual, Indigenous warrior, PTSD diagnosed, multiple trauma survivor, researcher, educator, critical race theory, whiteness, and intersectional scholar activist. Presented by yours truly, Abeita, real-life Isleta Pueblo superhero, doctoral candidate at the University of New Mexico. So, introductions. Now, who is this coyote that is sending you a video and a cover letter? Well, let's talk about the intersections of this real life Isleta Pueblo superhero. First of all, I am an Indigenous warrior that is walking the path that my ancestors have before me. I completely and 100% acknowledge that I am a child of modernity, but also the hopes and dreams of the sacrifices that my ancestors made before me so that I might survive and thrive today. I literally talk about my own lived experiences, my difficulties and ideological struggles with privilege and lightness. I am also a two-spirited individual, a bisexual, a PTSD diagnosed, multiple trauma survivor, researcher, activist, and advocate. I am a multiple trauma survivor 3 times over. I openly talk about in my research being a survivor of rape and molestation as a ramification of Indian boarding schools. Additionally, in 2008, I'm a survivor of an incident of police brutality. And 4 years ago, I actively talk and write about how I was suicidal due to the predatory behavior of a white male tenured professor. This coyote went to battle against the university, dehumanizing institutions, and literally challenged all of the systems. We created humanizing change in my university, and I have learned how to weaponize student voice activism and literally be a general in the movement, as I call the forever civil rights movement, to help support our communities now. In addition, family, I am a researcher, an activist, an educator, and the main 3 frameworks that this coyote pulls from are critical race theory, whiteness, and intersectionality. My educational background in a nutshell is I have a Bachelor of Arts in History and Native American Studies from Dartmouth College, a Master of Arts in American Indian Education from the University of New Mexico, and I am currently a rising doctoral candidate in the Language, Literacy, and Social Cultural Studies department. My concentration is in educational thought and social cultural studies. I also am a published author, family, so if you need some writing, you know this coyote can help you. I am so excited and proud to be sharing my very first book chapter, family. It came out, The Corona Chronicles, Necessary Narratives in Uncertain Times by Dio Press. I am proud to be chapter 3. In addition, I also have 3 additional publications. One currently in press for the Review of Education, Pedagogy, and Cultural Studies, and that is regarding our work in the ethnic studies classroom. My other 2 publications are in the Journal of Urban Learning, Teaching, and Research, and Equity and Excellence in Education. Those are featuring the works that I did with a youth group called LOUD, Leaders Organizing to Unite and Decriminalize. My research experience. Now, a diversity and inclusion specialist would be helpful to have a background and experience. This coyote comes with 10 years of experience in YPAR and critical autoethnography, and a variety of local community and global collaborative projects. In addition, I have served in 25 institutional and organizational service and leadership roles. And I'm also proud to have been a Glenda Lewis Critical Race Scholar for the University of New Mexico last year. And I've also additionally had 5 additional awards. Now, family, Human in common, you must be asking yourselves, why would Dre Abeita be a good fit for this position? So let's start right away with what a diversity specialist does. First of all, we are here to celebrate the intersections, the positionalities, the lived experiences that make us unique, special, and the only one of our kind. So when I look at diversity, I literally was called to your use of the words of compassion and empathy, because that is how this coyote walks in the world. So I am a marginalized person and have gone through my own experiences with microaggressions and trauma and come out a survivor and warrior. In addition, I have had a variety of experience serving diverse communities, including in reservations, charter schools, public schools, ethnic studies classrooms, as well as literal on-the-ground research teams in detention centers with my work with the Youth Participatory Action Group. We're doing youth participatory action research with a youth group called Loud. 75% of those amazing warrior youth had been formerly incarcerated in the juvenile justice system. And we literally went to the roundhouse and had a direct involvement in the probation agreement that came out for the state of New Mexico. One of the 17-year-olds literally called me out and said, if you're not an activist, then who is? She gave the rallying cry, family, and this coyote rose to the occasion, and I've been doing social justice work ever since. Additionally, family, you would get the powerhouse of experience that comes with looking at the world through the unique lens of critical race theory, whiteness, and intersectionality. Now, you are looking for a facilitator of workshops. That is right up this coyote's alley. First of all, I have 4 years of experience with working with youth, educating youth. I taught middle school, I taught high school, and I work with youth groups, family. It is part of my passion. I'm also incredibly proud to be one of the community partners and collaborators for Siembra Leadership High School here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I still volunteer my time giving back and doing workshops with those amazing high school students. In addition, on the adult level, family, I have 8 years of experience teaching in higher education, including over 69 courses and thousands of amazing students that I have under my belt, teaching nurses, social workers, and educators at Brookline College, New Mexico School of Social Work, and the University of New Mexico. This is an amazing list of all the theoretical frameworks and fields of expertise that this coyote has background knowledge in. So of course, critical race theory, intersectionality, whiteness, Native American education, Native American studies, ethnic studies, wide power sociology, critical autoethnography, critical narrative inquiry, because this coyote is all about using counter storytelling and focusing and centering our lived experiences as valid data and means for us to understand and make sense of the world around us. Additionally, family, I do qualitative research, have used tribal crit, have done research on the cradle to prison pipeline. Microaggressions are absolutely one of my specialties. Islamophobic pedagogy. I've also done research centering on the lived experiences of women of color, and of course, use history in order to illustrate all of these concepts that still affect our lives. Making the connection between our past and our present is incredibly paramount to understanding and creating critical consciousness in anyone who is working and learning and developing. Additionally, family, let's talk about my experience as a subject matter expert. So I've done over 18 conference panel member presentations, 9 poster and roundtable presentations, and 6 invited community events. Most of them have been at the American Education Research Association, the American Education Studies Association, the Critical Race Studies Association, and a variety of high schools and other community partners. Now let's talk about matching my skills and experiments with what you're requiring. First off, you're asking for a master's degree or equivalent, and I'm currently a PhD candidate. You're asking for someone who is well-versed in critical race theory, the history of racism, the emotional impacts of systemic racism and white supremacy. Again, I would like to reiterate that as an established critical race theorist, whiteness, intersectional scholar, I have literally been teaching thousands of our community members using these same terminologies, concepts, histories, and text. I wanted to bring a couple of my favorite family just to give you a small taste. Education for Extinction about American Indian history and education is incredibly important and paramount. The Souls of Black Folks, Du Bois' work has always been inspirational when we look at the debate on how we are going to educate our communities of color. Bonilla Silva's Racism Without Racist, how we can correctly identify racism in all the different forms and how it has evolved over time. Latinos Facing Racism. This is one of the foundational books that we use, especially in the social work courses. And I just want to reiterate, so New Mexico Highlands has an amazing national accredited social work class. And they have one class that really hones in on intersectionality and issues of race and racism and how to dismantle those systems of oppression. This is one of the critical foundational texts for those courses. And this Coyote has 4 years of experience teaching both the undergrad and the graduate level course of that. So critical multiculturalisms and intersectionality is a complex world is one of the foundational texts. And it literally gives a background and context for many of the topics that you've been talking about. So again, I just want to reiterate, this Coyote has 8 years of experience in higher education, directly talking about, giving examples, doing workshops, and teaching these students using their own lived experiences on why these isms and these often hidden concepts, institutions, and literal systems of inequality that are put into place. What I have been doing for literally the last 10 years, family, is helping people understand and find their own language and voice to address these issues. I'm always telling them, it's not you. This is done on purpose for the means of social control, because we live in a white supremacist colonial US empire. And we must acknowledge the lived experiences and our actual lived realities in order to start making sense of what is happening to us today, how we feel, the jobs we're doing, the rise and fall of our family's fortunes. All of that literally can be matched to race and to class within the context. Gender, sexuality, citizenship, language, all of those absolutely come into play, but really hammering down how class and race plays a huge part in our lived experience is incredibly important. Of course, the Bible of critical race theory, my amazing founder, Derek Bell, the father of critical race theory, is always and forever one of my influences. Counter storytelling, the use of fictional storytelling, has always been a very, Faces at the Bottom of the Well, one of my favorites, has always been a very effective tool when it comes to talking about what is happening and how to make sense of it. Angela Davis, Women, Race, and Class. So again, the new Jim Crow family. I also love the new Jim Crow, as I have an extensive background in juvenile justice reform and research, as well as trickster stories, right? So using our own indigenous epistemologies with a modern twist. This is a comic book family, but trickster stories, absolutely a prime resource. So I am just wanting to share with you that we should sit down and swap some stories, because I am sure I have a library full of resources that will actually fit exactly what you're requiring, what you're looking for. Additionally, I would like to look at some of the current Human in Common workshops that I could contribute to. Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion 101, absolutely. Interrupting Racism. I have done quite a few anti-racist focused workshops with my fellow collaborators from around the globe. specifically focusing on issues for gender discrimination, Islamophobia, as well as LGBTQ discrimination. Interrupting racism. I have a lot of partnerships and sisterhoods that I've created from around the globe that really help give a global perspective and understanding racism. One of the manuscripts that I'm working on is with my sister, and it compares our experiences, myself as an Indigenous, two-spirited bisexual warrior, and hers as a Muslim researcher from Indonesia here as a Fulbright scholar during the Trump era. And we write about the different experiences we had and facing that racism. Sexual harassment and assault prevention is definitely one of my passions. Like I said, I actively talk as a survivor about surviving rape and molestation and link it directly to Indian boarding schools and how my own family's experience was marked by that violence, how every woman in my family was affected by that violence and how we can stop these cycles. And I made connections to my research with Loud and with other stories of trauma and survivance and how it's still reoccurring and how it might reiterate or become a reiteration in the modern era, but how we can start addressing and healing the emotional gaps we actually have. Communities of color, the medical harm that's come from historically, like the Tsugi Syphilis Project, and why we have so much distress for people of color. My social work students, with my nursing students, my educating students, I'm always talking about how they can use their powers for good, right? So using my own experiences as a role model for what is possible, and sharing my own experiences with how I've used healing strategies. I have my own critical race theory, Walking as Coyote, where I meld indigenous epistemologies, ontologies, and ways of knowing with a superhero and pop culture idea of morality, right? Becoming a superhero during intense times of need like COVID, and how we can draw from our own ways of being, right? So one of my superpowers is and I pull from my strength and identity is knowing that I am a proud Indigenous warrior, right? So sexual harassment and assault prevention, again, I can address those by sharing my own survivor experiences. Gender equity and inclusion, again, talking about my own experiences, literally with coming out earlier this year in April during COVID. And I have been doing a vlogging dissertation project for over a year and a half now. And I have videos talking about space, being in the closet, how gender identity is formed, the stereotypes and harassment and violence that can come with the gaps of knowledge that we have, and how we can create bridges and knowledge and understanding based in our united human experience. Creating a beloved community. This coyote during COVID created an online community. I created the first critical race theory church. I am pastor of Coyote's Lodge, House of Spirituality, Critical Theory, Medical Marijuana. I talk about how we literally, my church is not based on a religious text or any religion, but rather we talk to our ancestors. So I literally say hello to my grandmother, my grandpa, my great grandfather. Every day we do a church service every week on Facebook Live. And I literally use not Bible or any stories like that, but I use the new Jim Crow. I use coyote trickster stories. I used an open letter from a professor asking for support during a particularly difficult time. So I use real people's lives and real people's experiences in order to create community using social media as my outlet. So literally, family, creating a beloved community is right up this coyote's alley. Upstanding to street harassment, healthy relationships, and ethical upstanders. Those sound incredibly important. And I believe that I have some past experiences that would align with that, but I look forward to really understanding more in depth. And again, this is not the whole list of workshops that you offer, but these were the ones that really spoke to me and that I feel that I could contribute in a deep and significant way. So my apologies, family. I did not finish on the right-hand side. I did not finish the rest of my list, so I wanted to go back to that. I also just wanted to say that my own original critical race theory, Walking as Coyote, talks about using superpowers and super tools. So what I could bring to the table again would be my use of social media, how that's a powerhouse of communication. My vlogging dissertation project literally talks about how identity can be linked to our social media identity, right? Our digital selves is a legitimate aspect of our identity, and we use it for communication, especially during COVID, where human-to-human contact was literally unsafe, right? So I bring to the table that idea that social media is a tool of activism and advocacy. I can bring to the table different strategies and how to use open communication. I literally taught multicultural communications and sociology to nursing students for 6 years. So I have lots of ideas and different ways out of the box that we can make that stronger. I also bring a background of using critical theory, reflection, and community-based learning to the table. I've worked extensively with ethnic studies, literally in states right now, right? Ethnic studies and critical race theory is under fire, under attack as a scary ideology, right? We are afraid of ideas because ideas matter. So help me change the world through literally wrinkling people's brains, sharing our own experiences. I also am an expert in helping collaborations form. I have a background in event planning and community organizing. All of this weaponization of volunteerism is what I've dedicated my life to for the last literally 15 years, family. So use my skills to create social advocacy and change in the world. I went ahead and already covered the workshops and how I'd be able to contribute to them. Let's go to the next ideas and support that I can offer. So I am literally a vlogger, hashtag influencer with over 15,000 followers on over 6 different social media platforms. And I'll tell you, family, it was an education. This coyote was a Luddite. 3 years ago, I was like, why are you on Facebook? 3 years later, post COVID, I'm on there 20 hours a week. Not per se as a means of surveilling people, but rather as a deliberate act of activism, right? I'm literally going out there to create a global family on purpose to help share my own experiences so people feel less alone. I have PTSD, so I literally will have panic attacks on my vlog and share that with almost 16,000 people, but yet explain how I can still be a superhero and the leader of the world's largest graduate student organization. I'm the chair of something called the American Education Research Association Graduate Student Council, which means that I lead over 7,000 graduate students from around the world. It is a huge and awesome responsibility. But part of what I was able to do is use social media as a tool to recruit and help and ask for people to change the world with me. Additionally, family, I am currently working with Siembra Leadership High School, and I think that it's a great model. There's a lot of opportunities there for partnerships on grant writing, to bring in money for foundations, to help pay and offset the costs for public education or community groups that might not be able to afford our consulting or coaching services for trainings. So there are many potential partnerships that we could do on the local and global and collaborative partnerships that would be able to not only bring the revolutionary curriculum that Human in Common is currently working on, but also to make sure that we're creating a sustainable model, because education and quality training does have a cost, as anything worthwhile. Finding unique and creative ways to fund that is going to be key in the future. Additionally, I am an expert in curriculum development and training, so I would definitely be able to help support and add my tools to the toolbox for those goals. So why Human in Common? Literally, why do I want to work for you? So first off the bat, I was taken by literally your mission, who you are and your description and who your mission is and the work that you do spoke to me on an individual personal level. You're small and you're woman owned. as a two-spirited, but I literally look female, and I'm working on it, family. I'm working on my transcript, and I'm working on loving myself in any shape or form that I come. But as a 40-year-old warrior, this form is the one that I'm most used to. So knowing that I would be working for a small woman-owned company is comforting and literally promotes the feeling of safety and security for me. Additionally, in the description, it was described as respectful intervention in biased and potentially harmful situations. Kudos to you for literally recognizing that this work can be violent. We are going into hostile spaces and talking about ideas that make people uncomfortable, but how we do it in a humanizing, compassionate, but with passion way is going to be key. And that is how I have been so successful in my outreach and all of the work that I've been doing and the building of bridges that I've been doing, is because at the end of the day, they know that I care, that I am passionate, and that I'm not out there to get them. At first, they're taken aback. I definitely have been called a racist, white basher, man hater. And then 3 months later, after that student is finishing my class, it was a complete 360. They understood that I was a human in their eyes, that I wasn't scary, that these were literal ideologies and ideas and frameworks that were helping them realize that the world was not as equal as they had been told. That racism and sexism and Islamophobia and gender inequality did exist, and that we could do something about it. Additionally, the descriptions of compassionate and empathetic approaches and offering real strategies appeals to me. That is how I walk in this world as a real-life Isleta Pueblo superhero. I am on the mission from Miami to transform this world. I will be president of the United States by the time I am 64, which gives me 24 years to prove to this world that I have some big ideas that are going to create global transformation. So I'm saying, family, let this coyote join your amazing team and change the world with you. Additionally, it also aligns with my personal and professional goals. I literally am trying to dismantle racism. I am literally sharing my story with everyone about sexual harassment in order to create change. I take on one pro bono case, volunteer case out of my time to help advocate. They're usually graduate students or undergraduate students who need someone to help them take on a university for literally sexual harassment, academic theft, violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act, just to name a few cases that I've been working on the last couple of years. So I have been doing exactly what Human in Common's mission speaks to. And I think that our powers combined could do amazing things. So from the perspective of a real-life Isleta Pueblo superhero, Indigenous warrior, two-spirited, bisexual, PTSD diagnosed, multiple trauma survivor, researcher, activist, educator, critical race theory, whiteness, and intersectional scholar, activist, Human in Common is exactly the type of revolutionary workplace in which this coyote and academic could thrive. So what I hope to learn and contribute, if given this opportunity, I'd like to learn more and grow professionally. I will literally be working with the powerhouses who are doing the work that I aspire to. And I've been doing the work, family. Believe me, I've been doing the work. But in the research capacity, I've literally been a graduate student, a support worker, an observer, and a researcher. I mean, I have been a researcher. But I want to join a team to go do training. That is really what I want to do. It's a turn. Consulting work would be a new gig for me, going from teaching in the classroom or doing research observations from what's happening in the classroom to doing training in the field is what I aspire to, and I'd love to learn from the best. Additionally, the social ecological framework is new to me, but I would love to learn more about the different levels, individual, interpersonal, organizational, and community. I also would love to learn from both of my new peers if afforded this opportunity to add my voice and support to this amazing movement of social justice. In closing, thank you so much for consideration for the key role of diversity and inclusion specialists. I appreciate this opportunity to showcase my skills and give examples of what I could potentially offer as an addition to your team. Regardless of the selection of your process, I look forward to influencing and reshaping the world through our collective efforts to provide transformational educational experiences. I also wanted to note that although this coyote lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I am a fan of Massachusetts and would love the opportunity to travel and join an amazing team. So I hope to hear from you soon. And if not, best of luck with all of your endeavors. Please stay safe and sane. And absolutely let me know at any time if there's any questions that I can answer. I do have a website, abeitaconsulting.com. And please, again, this coyote is all about transforming the world. So if this position is already filled, no problem. I will always and forever be a community resource. So keep me in mind as we change the world, one conversation, one experience, and one individual at a time. This coyote is signing off. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.